All right, Steve Wood, recovered alcoholic. Welcome to the Great Reality Book Study. Um, last week we did our second week talking about self-will, instincts, and we talked about the actor and got into like having collisions with people, with something or somebody, even when our motives are good. Yes, instincts and collision. You remember the actor that wants to run the whole show? The lights, the ballet, the scenery. He thinks he's the director, not just the actor. And that if everyone you know is happy, so he'll be happy too. And he's kind and patient and modest and self-sacrificing, but he may also be mean, egotistical, selfish, and dishonest. um it's a good reason to turn your whole life over to care of God just on that. But even his best most sees a producer of confusion rather than harmony. And we talked about self-centeredness being the root of our trouble. And I showed the picture of the tree, and underneath the ground is what tells the story. Inside of us is what tells the story. And if we do get rid of the roots, they always grow back, right? And we talk, get rid of self or it kills us. Hold on one second. I have to go tell my kid to get off his computer. Hold on. Sorry about that. My kid was going yelling at his computer in the other room, so he's not supposed to be on there this time. Um, we talk about quit playing God. God needs to be our director, not us. And he is the principal and we are his agents, father and children. That's the unconditional love. And God will walk us through this intricate arch to freedom. And freedom is, I can live life without restraints. I can be free. There's a great story I like to tell. This sums up what it's like to be one with God and really have God walking beside you. There's this cow that goes into the jungle, and it's not supposed to go there, but it goes off in the jungle to graze. And suddenly a lion comes racing towards her. And she looking, desperately looking for a place to escape. She sees a shallow pond, barely escaping the lion's reach. She falls right into the pond in the heat of the chase, and the lion, in the heat of the chase, lands in the pond with her. And the problem was the pond was extremely deep, filled with thick mud, and so they're kind of sinking into it. And the cow and the lion, they find themselves as face to face apart from each other, and stuck in this mud, not knowing what's going to happen next, but unable to free themselves, and they become very tired. And the lion keeps roaring at the cow, and I'm gonna enjoy eating you. And he thrashes about, but he cannot get loose from the mud, and he becomes worried that he can escape. And the cow watches the lion struggle calmly, and the lion is like, why are you so calm? And the cow says, do you have a master? And the lion, arrogantly, egotistically replies, I'm the king of the jungle. Why would I need a master? I am my master. And the cow says, you may be the king of the jungle, but right now all your power has failed you. And what about you? Snapped the lion. You're going to die here with me too. The cow smiles and says, no, no, I'm not. The lion snapped back, if the king of the jungle cannot be free, how is a stupid cow going to get to escape from this? And the cow gently replied, I cannot free myself, but my master can. And when the sun sets and he finds me not at home, he will come looking for me. And once he finds me, he will raise me up and bring me home. The lion fell silent and coldly glares at the cow. And when the sunlight drops, just like the cow said, the master arrives and immediately recognizes the cow's dilemma and lifts her to safety. And as they re become reacquainted with each other and walk back home, both felt renewed gratitude for each other. And the master said to the cow, I would have been happy to save the lion and free him if he only would allow me to. So the cow represents a surrendered heart. The lion represents the ego, the egotistical mind. And the master, of course, represents God. And the chase represents life. And the mud represents what many call the struggle. You know, it's good to be independent and not rely on anyone, but no, you will always need guidance. You always need a master, so to speak, who will be always on the lookout for you and care for you. Turning your life, to God does not mean we're weak. What it means is we're stronger with God's help. There's a quote I was thinking about earlier today from a man who I pretty much consider a saint, so to speak, and he's respected all over the world. He's taught moral codes and forgiveness and helping others and devotion to God. And his name is Sai Baba. And this is what he had to say: there are countless gurus and mentors in this world, but our Father is the real guru. Others might say many good things, but we should never forget our Father's words. In short, love the Father, surrender to him, completely give your life over to him humbly, and then you will see there is no darkness, only light. So today we're going to basically make a third step decision. If you would like to stay when the meeting's over, we've done this many times, and we're going to do third step prayers individually. It's very magical. So if you don't mind staying afterwards, that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to do a quick review of step 3. Well, how we got here so far. I'm going to put up my slide. You can see physiology mental obsession is what we find why we're powerless, not people, places, and things. So the problem is powerlessness. We're human beings that lack power because of this mental obsession. It's a reoccurring, persistent idea of drinking that doesn't respond to reason. And the physical allergies, our reaction to alcohol, we lose control. And we surrender to the fact we're powerless in step 1. We're human beings who lack human power. But know this: we're spiritual beings who lack spiritual power. And we become willing to seek that power in 4 through 9. And that's what I'm doing in step 2, being willing to seek this power. And we find that we're able to just be willing to believe in that. So we reach this turning point, the decision to either seek the power of 4 through 9 or we don't. And that's where we're at. Turning point, decision to seek spiritual change 4 through 9. Doesn't sound very difficult, but to some people it's scary as hell. We're on page 63. So page 63, probably the only page we're going to cover tonight. But I think we'll have plenty of time to cover all this stuff in here. This is a meaty page. But, all of these become results when we proceed with action beyond step 3. It says when we sincerely. I look at that word as the same thing as honesty, knowing where I'm at. When I sincerely or honestly took such a position. So I'm sincerely, or when I know where I'm at and I can take this position, and that's I'm broken. Success in that position is putting God first. So in a serious successful position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. So I put God first, all sorts of remarkable things follow. We have a new employer. And what does an employer do? They pay you for the work you do. Well, this employer pays very, very handsomely. And if you do the work, you get paid spiritually. And I always tell people in this program, you either get paid or you pay the price. And I'm sure many of us have paid the price before. Being all powerful, he provided what we needed if we kept close to him and performed his work well. So there's a lot of stuff here. So let's break that down. God provides what we need if we keep close and perform his work well. So there's two conditions in this sentence. The first condition is a condition like a prerequisite before doing something. So it's a condition to have it. The first condition is keeping close to God. How do we do that? Well, 4 through 9 is going to remove all this stuff that stands between me and God. And that's also in step 10. And then how else do I stay close to God? Step 11. That's 12 and 12 calls it an unshakable foundation for life. Those two intertwined. That's how I keep close to God, right? A lot of people want to keep close to God and have dishonesty and egotistical mind. You can't have God and egotistical mind at the same time. You can't have God and be dishonest at the same time. The second condition, perform his work well. Well, what's God's work? What's God's work? Let's go to page 77. It's just a little journey to this. And let's look at what is God's work? And we'll say on 77, one of the most profound lines in the book. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to maximum service to God and the people about us. So we fit ourselves spiritually fit with steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and of course doing 10 daily. So what does maximum mean? So maximum is the greatest, largest amount possible. You know, the service is to provide duties of help and assistance to others. They're talking about the greatest amount of service possible, maximum service. What is the ultimate service we can do? Sponsor, others through this program of recovery. Sponsoring is doing God's work. Let's go to 102 real quick and let's get another example of God's work. Page 102. Okay, so it says your job. Remember, you got a new employer, right? Your job now is to be in a place where you may be maximum helpfulness to others. That word again, maximum helpfulness to others. So where you can be maximum service to God and people about you. So never hesitate to go anywhere if you can be helpful. You should not hesitate to visit the most sorest partners for such an errand. Keep on the firing line of life with these motives, and God, both, will keep you unharmed. Unharmed means, again, providing what we need. Unharmed. God provide what we need. That's one example of it. Unharmed. Sponsoring, helping others, that's God's work. So what they're saying, go back 63, what they're saying here, if we put God first, staying close to him in 4 through 9, and daily, repetition of step 11, we stay close to God. And we put others second, doing God's work, our needs get met. God first, others second, our needs get met. Like I just said, unharmed, provided what we need. Many things, God first, others second, our needs get met. So what does that mean? I mean, God is the provider of what we need. And interesting, a provider gives someone something they need. That's what a provider does that they don't have, right? If you're a provider to someone's food at home, you're bringing food in. If you're the provider of the household, you're bringing money into the house. God first, other second, our needs get met. This completely shifts into being awake when I start doing that. Selfless is, tending mostly to the needs of others, of low thought of my own. I become selfless, right? So let's look at the promises of putting God first, other second, and our needs being met. So established on such a footing. So one thing I want to bring up is, how do you get established, right? How do you get established with something? How do you get established at work? You be seen, you work hard, but you put time and effort into what you do, energy. You build something, that's how you get established. You're building something. So established as a footing, we become less interested in ourselves, our little plans and designs. More and more, we become interested to see what we could contribute to life. So never contributing to life. I thought I didn't bring anything. I thought I had a feeling of uselessness before. So instead of uselessness or selfish and self-centeredness, this process of altruism takes a hold of you. You're other-centered, and that we start helping others. Look what it says now. As we felt new power flow in, not recycled old, some old, belief or old book I have put away for, on my shelf and never opened. New power flow, not recycled, new power flow in. So there's another condition. It cannot be the old one. Doesn't mean you can't be in the same spiritual aspects or beliefs or religious aspects. You just got to have a new relationship with God. Remember, it says on page 72, we're trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator. It must be new to receive these promises. As we felt new power flowing, as we enjoyed peace of mind, I can guarantee you, all the people in this room, there's not one person here that says, forget, I don't want peace of mind. You're not going to find it. Who doesn't want emotional calmness? Who doesn't want absence of fear or stress, anxiety, or that feeling of guilt or uselessness? But who wants that feeling of feeling safe and protected? That feeling, that's a feeling we call security. Now I can either have security from God and he provides what I need and I feel protected, or I can follow my instincts, which will lead me to the right amount of money, the right food, the right women or men or whatever, all that stuff, where we get satisfied. So where my security is always wrapped up in emotional and material. Do you see what the care of God does? Peace of mind is not from the absence of conflict in our life. It's the ability to face challenges in our life. That's how you get peace of mind. You don't get peace of mind by just saying, "Oh, I'm not going to think about it anymore." No, it's the ability to face this stuff. So as we enjoy peace of mind, excuse me, as we discovered we can face life successfully. Remember what said, remember it said early, we read a few weeks ago, any life around self-will could probably be a success. And we discovered we can face life successfully. It's the opposite of the self-will, where it's hardly a success. Those were devilments. That is facing life unsuccessfully. That's failure. As all foreign against things. We discovered we could face life successfully as we became, and here's the powerful word, conscious of his presence, aware of God. How do you know something? From experiencing something, right? I could sit on here and someone could tell me that Rob is 7'5", and I could go meet Rob and I know right away he's not 7'5" because I've experienced him. I know this. The other one was a theory. Conscious of his presence, a deep awareness that God is real. No doubt, Gnostic, knowing God, not agnostic, Gnostic. It's not knowing about God, it's knowing God. We know a lot about God. I know a lot about Canada, but I don't know Canada. I've never been there, right? I want to know about God. The only way I'm going to know about Canada is by going there. The only way I know about God is by spending some time with God. Look what it says. We begin to lose our fear of today. Think about how often you start where you would wake up in the morning and you're half awake and all of a sudden all these fears start swimming in your head and you just can't go back to sleep. In the old days we would get up and have a drink or dope, whatever, And if you're really lost and not doing this program, you wake up and that just swims in your head for hours. This is we begin to lose our fear of tomorrow. Fear of tomorrow. Is that possible? We begin to lose our fear of the hereafter. Hereafter is a time that has not yet happened. Another place and time. So we had fear of today. We've always had fear of tomorrow. We've always had fear of the hereafter. I don't know if I'll ever be successful. I don't know if I ever have what I want. And look what it says now. We were reborn. Now, I first read it the first time. I immediately thought, oh God, born again. You know, it sounds too religious for me, but it made all the sense in the world. We're reborn into consciousness, into awareness of what you are and what you've always been, and what our human side always tries to move away from, and that's God consciousness. We're always trying, our human side, our ego, it's the human side, always wants to move away from that. But the main thing is, this is not just a promise. This is not just a result here. This is a guarantee. And the promises in the book are great, but I like to call them guarantees if you haven't done the steps yet. It sounds even powerful. But look at the guarantee. Reborn. This is not, oh, I'm going to get a second chance. It's not a second chance here. We've had plenty of second chances, then third chances, and fifth chances, and 10th chances. This is about having a brand new beginning, new life, for some of us brought back to life, a life we thought would never see again. So it's not about leaving life; it's rejoining life. Another word for reborn is, of course, conversion. We talked about spiritual awakening, spiritual experience. Those are conversion. Any conversion it's the adoption of a new belief system towards higher power, God, whatever, that completely differs from the old belief system. And usually it might be that belief system that you just came up with on step 2, but do 4 through 9, and all of a sudden, boom, it's all change. It leads one to change in character and wholeness. Same thing as awakening experience. Same thing as entire psychic change. Everything about you is different. Bill didn't want us to not just change some things. He wanted to change everything. One of my friends used to say, the one thing he used to hate doing was Mom make him do was clean out the refrigerator. Like take all the food out and scrub it and everything like that. And put back what's still good. And that's what we kind of did here. We're taking, and we don't like to put work into that, but we have to if you want this way of life. Deep spiritual change. So before we get into this third step prayer, I want to read the sentence above it, the third step prayer. And it says, we thought well. No, we're pondering now, right? We're thinking well, we're thinking about it. Remember, this is just a decision before taking this step, making sure we're ready. Am I ready to do this? Then we can at last abandon ourselves utterly to him. And the word abandonment some people don't like to hear that word at all because maybe they've been abandoned during their life by a parent or a friend or somebody. So they're associated with leaving something behind. And it's not we're not referring, to us being abandoned at all. It's also means abandon also means, to withdraw, from danger, run away, if the fire, there's a fire in the house, abandon the house or abandon ship. But we're not running away from something here. We're walking into it. They're referring about us abandoning ourselves to God. So abandon also means to give up control. Give up control. We've been trying, our ego wants to control our life. Our ego wants to make all decisions for us, and those 7 pieces of self, those instincts form that, and it will keep going. You think about what our ego does, it creates struggles. One of our greatest struggles in life is who gets to control our life. Who do we fight with when we were kids? Our parents, because their parents controlled our life. Where did we get in trouble at? Well, not just at home, but we also get in trouble in school. School and teachers try to control us. Some of us played sports and the coach was in control. And then we turn, some of us younger than 13 or 14 or 15, we get our first job. And if you're late again, you're fired. The boss has control. How many times do we have conflict, butting heads with parents, teachers, coaches, bosses, maybe still to this day, all over control? And you think about it, you look about your past relationships, maybe the ones you're in or failed relationships, it's always a battle for control. And what happens to a lot of us is as we get older and we finally feel like we have this illusion that we have our life under control. I'm not going to give this life to anyone ever again. I'm not going to get married ever again. I'm not going to have this ever again. I don't want to, have no one's going to talk down to me anymore. There's a lot of people come recover with that attitude. It's an angry attitude. The real truth is we never had control. It's an illusion. So let's look at it from a first step standpoint. It's always been a battle with control, right? We try to control our drinking, but we can't. We have an allergy. We failed at that, right? We try to fight the obsession, control the obsession, and we failed at that. And then there's the actor we read about last week, who thinks he's the director, who he believes he's in control. The control, remember the control, if the control he had, if everyone stays put, do as he wants, life would be great. His, our happiness, his happiness, our happiness, many times determined by what others should do. If they don't do it, expectations, we get angry. You look at your first inventory you've done, or your current inventory. If he doesn't get the control he wants, resentment occurs, failure at control. Why do we fail control? Because we're driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, self-seeking, and self-pity. We're driven by instincts. Instincts run riot. So remember when there's a riot? Whenever there's a riot somewhere, it's another word for out of control. Instincts out of control. Basically, my instincts are out of control. I'm selfish. And what do we want to do? We play God. Right? And playing God is what? Trying to control others and situations. Another word for failure. Another failure. So playing God is us giving up control and handing it over to God. Let's go to page 59 really quick, and we'll bring it together a little tighter. And you've heard this a million times. Half measures avail us nothing. Half measures avail us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care with complete abandon. Sounds familiar? Abandon? So where's the turning point? So we go back to 53 now. And what's interesting is 2 and 3 are so connected because 3 is just telling me I need to do these damn steps, and 3 is making a decision to do it. And so now we're looking at 53. This is the turning point. It says, when we became alcoholics, crushed by a self-imposed crisis, we could not postpone or evade. We had to fiercely face the proposition either God is everything or else he's nothing. God either is or isn't. What's our choice to be? What was our choice to be? So remember, self-imposed crisis. It's not my parents' fault. It's no one else's fault. I started looking at myself. And we fearlessly face, right? We talked about earlier. You have to face life. So if you're a real alcoholic, faced with the steps, there'll come a time where you reach this turning point where you must abandon yourself to God. And they're not asking us to give up control or little control. They're asking us to give up all control. It's God or me. One way to look at it is, what's the one thing we always hear at Reddit meetings? God could and would if you were sought. It's a promise, right? Back in 63, but another word, important word, and the last sentence is the word utterly. right? What does the word utterly mean? Give ourselves up utterly to him. That means completely without question, utterly. So since abandonment means to give up control, and utterly means without completely without question, I'm going to reread the last sentence with those words in it, just to get a deeper understanding. We thought well before taking the step, making sure we were ready, that we could at last give up control completely and without question to God. That sounds scary, but we get the point. A lot of us won't understand that until we get awoken to God and we realize I've done that. But if you want this, you need to give up control without question. Why? Because we don't have any legs to stand on. There's no, our arguments don't hold up in court. If you disagree what I'm saying there, how successfully have you been in controlling your life, running your life, managing your life, unmanageable? Can you control resentments, or they control you? Can you control fear, or does it control you? Can control guilt, or does it control you? Can you control pride and personal relations and self-esteem and money and sex, and or does that control you? Can you control, having high anxiety, getting easily mad and never satisfied, restless, irritable, discontent, or does that control you? Can you control alcohol or drugs, or does that control you? All that stuff is the earmarks of an unmanageable life, a failure at control. Any life run on self-will could hardly be a success. Freedom from self is the answer. That's the answer. It's not a mystery. Change must occur. A big problem with people with God, and this goes back thousands and thousands of years, is, remember the old days of the analog phones where you call 911, you still have 911, but you also have 411. So one was emergency and one was answers, guidance. And people want a 911 God rather than a 411 God. That's not one who relies on God, only going to God when things turn to crap. So we need a 411 God that we can go to every day for guidance, directions. There's an old saying that my grandma used to say, there's no atheists in foxholes. God is not about getting strength. God's about getting strength, inspiration, guidance, and direction, because we don't have it. It's about giving your life over to God. Turning our life over to care of God. That's a complete transfer of control. Today, I'm not in control of how things work out in my life. I take action and leave the results to God. I put the outcomes in God's hands. How I respond to it in His care. I do the action, I let God do the heavy lifting. Go to 64 real quick. I always read its responses before we look at the third step, right? I like to call this the third step warning. Though our decision, that's step 3, was a vital and crucial step. So think when something's vital, like you go to the hospital, they take your vitals. Why do they do that? To see if you're alive, make sure you're going to check your vital signs. It was a vital and crucial step, like a little permanent effect. So little permanent effect, unless at once, to the time frame, at once, followed by strenuous effort, that's step 4, to face step 5 and be rid of 6 and 7, the things in ourselves which have been blocking us from God. It's also saying recovery begins at step 4. So it's always unite prayer with action. I don't sit around. If anyone that I sponsored in here knows that we do a third step with me, you better have your 4th step written and pretty quick, because I surprise people by getting them up to 1, 2, and 3 in a matter of hours. I'm not a line by line guy or anything like that, because what it says right here, I don't want people sitting on the third step, because that's a little permanent effect. you know, but it all begins, we have to have action. You pray for potatoes, better start digging. You pray for tomatoes, you better start planting the plants. You know, secret is action. You know, um, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I had a lot of mixed feelings when I did step 3 the first time. I had like a lot of doubt, a lot of prejudices towards, religion. This prayer kind of eased me into it. It kind of blew my mind because I grew up Catholic and I did a lot of prayers, but never spoke sincerely of this. I was very robotic, you know. I mean, and the the first time I did step 3 was I mean I did book studies where we dropped our knees and stuff. I mean, but maybe once. But when I was in early 20s, I think it was the very first time I ever did it. I didn't even know it existed. Was I had a Christian sponsor, just a guy I got. He was a great guy. He was a super sincere man and great guy. And but when I did the prayer, it was just seemed like a prayer. And then I wasn't ready for it. Second time was in 96. And I was blown away at these guys' book studies I was going to. And I got what I thought this guy was the perfect sponsor. He looked, he was loud, abrasive, tough guy. And he could break down the steps. But I wasn't ready. I did the third step with him and I used it. It got loaded that night. You know, I somewhat sincerely, but I wasn't ready for it. The third time was when I went to rehab the very last time, and I got out. I've been out for like not that long, maybe 3 weeks, 2 weeks, and I got a sponsor. And the next day, we go to 1 and 2, and then he goes, "Well, you're in luck. The grand sponsor's explaining 3 tomorrow night." So he explains 3. And he did exactly what we did tonight. He goes, "All right." He goes, "I'm going to explain to you." He goes, we got 8 guys here doing the third step the first time. Drop to your knees. And I'm like, oh my God, what is going on here? I didn't know, I didn't sign for this. And we all did that. It blew my mind. It blew my mind. I mean, there was guys praying, pleading for their lives, like they were, trying to take away, cancer or something, pleading. And I never had been involved with that before. When it got to me, I'm always the last person. I always go to the end of the line. And I was like, it was perfect, and I started writing my inventory that, within minutes after that, you know, I mean, there's other prayers in recovery, but this one just has a depth and weight. It's just a beautiful, perfect prayer. So let's look at this prayer. So it says God, and we know what God is. You call it supreme being, power, you can call it spirit. Some people call it perfection. Some people call it love, all know, whatever you want to call it. God of your understanding. But it's a principal object of many faiths, religions, everything. So it's a very familiar word. That's why it says every man which has a fundamental idea of God. Because you can have a stadium full of people, it's not going to be someone that goes, "Oh, I never heard of that before." It's there. It says, you know, I offer myself to thee, to build with me, to offer myself to thee. Offer is an expression of what? Willingness, being ready, right? And so it's a struggle if you're not ready. You know, you're offering, you're willing to give or do something. In the case, offering our life over to God. Thee is a singular pronunciation meaning you. Build means to construct. And Bill's been, we've been talking in this book. Bill, you would think he was a union contractor or something. He was always building something in this book, all the way through it. And we've been building this arch, and we've been building that. We keep building it. And he keeps going back to examining again and again and again. But a good example is years ago down the street from my house, there was an old pizza restaurant. I actually liked it. It was run down though, but people around here want everything fancy now. But they put up a sign that, it's shut down and said new pizza place soon coming, Skipling's Pizza. And they put a sign out front. And then before they build it, they put a fence around it. announcing it and everything. Then there was this like loud pounding and banging going on inside day and night, even at night. And as they tore the old building down and redid everything inside, and the trucks would come in to haul away the old useless rubble to make room for what? For something brand new. And they could take their time and build it perfectly. So you see, destruction, tear down must take place before construction can begin on the new building. Are we any different than that? We're the same way. When you turn your life over to the care of God by taking action, there's a period of destruction, 4 and 5, and then the removal of stuff, 6 and 7, and a period of construction, rebuilding and reconstruction, 9, 10, 11, 12. Look what else this prayer says, and to do with me as thou wilt. Again, thou is, meaning you or your. Wilt means as will, as you're thinking or God's thinking. Will is thinking. He says, every day is a day must carry, or think about this, what it said in the book earlier. Every day is a day we must carry God's vision of the vision of God's will into all our activities. How can this serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. So it's saying that's what they mean when it's talking about the will. Every day. Now comes the big one. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do that will, thy will. So it's saying to have that will, I need to be relieved of the bondage of self. And relieve means to reduce or remove pain, suffering, misery, right? It comes from a Latin word meaning to help, ease something. Think of like what an ice pack does to your back when you're in lots of pain, right? And bondage is simple, it's a state of being a slave. So it's being a slave to your instincts, and that's a scary place to be, and self, relieving the bondage of self, that's our essential drives for life. That's our instincts. Self. It's called self-will in this book. It's called exactness our wrongs. Everything is called. But it's all because that third column. So self, one essential drives for life, instincts, relieving the bondage of high self-esteem, relieving the bondage of pride, relieving the bondage of a material security, whatever it is, right? So instead of praying for stuff that will make you happy, we're praying to be relieved from the bondage of that stuff, to do better, to do his will. I gotta move that stuff out of the way that I've always prayed for. I'm not praying for the Ferrari here. So I can really pray for something. Because remember, we are prisoners to ourselves. We're a prisoner to ourselves. That's why it says that alcoholism is the only prison where the key is inside. So it says we're beginning to transformation from our will to God's will. Look at all the pain that was caused by you relying on self, on others, everything. Now they're asking to be relieved of the bondage of self. There's nothing more profound than seeing a person lost in the bondage of self to finding freedom from the bondage of self. From one minute they're dying in pain and desperate, and then all of a sudden they're changed. It's like it's magic or miracle. They say, don't wait till the miracle happens, no, go seek the miracle. That's what it's talking about. Take away my difficulties. Difficulties is the condition of being troubled or challenged and stuff like that. Any difficulty that we go through and overcome, we have the capacity to help others. So our difficulties of our defects of character that stand in our way teach us to be maximum service to God and people about us. That victory over them may bear witness. Victory, success, right? To achieve success over our difficulties or obstacles. And bear witness is to see evidence, the proof. Where do we see the evidence and proof? Where do we bear witness? 4 and 5, right? We're stripped away. We're stripped away. To those I would help of thy power. It means your power. Help Service again, maximum service, power, the ability to direct the course of events, to make something happen, or to just follow an internal spirit that's within you, the great reality. Thy love, we know what thy is, but love, unconditional affection, no limitations involved or judgment, absolute, absolute love, and thy way of life. This prayer is very much influenced by Oxford groups, absolutes, absolute love, absolute honesty, absolute purity, absolute unselfishness. Very much inspired by it. And thy way of life. Thy way of life. We vow to help others to reach this way of life. I mean, what's the way of life? It's a manner in which we live. That's what they're saying. What's the manner you want to live? Have you been fighting that your whole life? You know, I heard a guy say this in a meeting yesterday. He said, you shouldn't have to wait for our bucket list to happen to enjoy life. There's a difference between my life and my living. My life is what I do inside. My living is what I do here, what I do around me. I always thought if I get my living in order out here, everything's going to be great and all the pain goes away. You know, I thought if everything out here is good, everything inside would be good as well. The truth is, when I got my life in order, my living got better. My life was inside of me, right? The final line is the most important. May I do thy will always. You know, that's the gulp. People, you know, before they don't read this prayer and they see that, may I do your will always, say, oh, this is serious. This isn't a game anymore. Because that means at all times, forever, eternity, keep going. Infinity, endless circle, like the circle and the triangle. What's the circle and triangle mean? Infinity. There's no end, no beginning. It just keeps going and going and going. If I don't do these steps, I lose the circle. I had a guy with one of my friends' dads with 40 years, 38 years relapsed. Book dumping guy and everything, and I was shocked. And he said, what happened? He says, I lost the circle. He lost, you know, kept doing the steps. As for the amen, there is none. More be revealed. So there's two parts to prayer, you know. There's the first is petition and the second is the action. So petition is to request sent to authority. And when you seek action 429 after the third step prayer, you will discover that your will and your life is now in the care of God. Every time I've done a third step, a genuine third step, I follow up with an inventory. First time I did, like at that guy's house, they each gave us a sheet. And you had to write down one resentment. They said, now your life's over to God. And we had to start keep writing. I mean, the good way, I said this before, step 3 is where there's a doorway that I see in front of me. I take the action 4 and 5, it opens the door. And 6 and 7 is when I walk inside. And when I walk inside, I enter the world of the spirit. You know, like I said, I had strong feelings about this, such as doubt, but this prayer eased me in. So step 3 is, it's like our oath. I can't mention step 3 without mentioning commitment. And a lot of us came from where we couldn't commit to people or broke promises. But commitment is an action. It's to completely dedicate yourself to something. Committing your life over the care of God, over to God and the care of God, is a commitment 429. Giving yourself to this program is all about commitment. It's way more than words. Actions speak louder than words. We heard that before. It's not something we try out for a while and abandon. We see that happen all the time in recovery. It's not about, it's about dedication, obligation, and willingness to work the rest of my life to grow. Selflessly making sacrifices, continue it. You know, sticking sticking to it when my life is crap, you know, making time when there is none, you know, with my full attention and energy and effort into it, my heart, mind, and soul. But so I'm investing physically, mentally, and emotionally, and spiritually. But it's being there and putting time and energy into it year after year, day after day. So it's just, so this is your life. You know, it's the stuff character is made of. There's no days off. I got sponsors. When there's a day off of this, the steps. It may not be easy, but it makes life easier. If we don't stay committed, we're doomed. We're doomed. Most don't stay committed. Completely giving yourself to this program 14 nights, all about that commitment. I'm going to say a quick parable before we get into the prayer and all that. There's story of this drunk is walking on the street. Now this drunk has been in and out of AA for years. He knows what a recovered alcoholic is. He's never been there, but he knows there's steps. And he's walking down the street completely obliterated, and he's frustrated, and he just screams out to God, and God appears. And he says, God, please give me sobriety, make me recovered. He give me your will. And God says, sobriety isn't free. How much money you got? He reaches to this pile. I got $80. My God, give it to me. I'll take it. He goes, you're free. The man stands up straight. So God blesses him. He doesn't feel drunk no more. His obsession's gone. He looks good. He's like, whoa, happened so quick. And then he says, God, I got a problem. I just gave you my last $80. I need to put gas in my car. And God says, oh, you have a car? I'll hand it over. I'll take that too. But without a car, I can't get to work. You have a job? Oh, I'll take that too. But God, how will I pay my mortgage? We have a house? I'll take that too. But God, if you take away my house, where are my kids going to sleep? You have kids? I'll take them too. And he's frustrated, he puts his hands on his face. He's like ready to give up. And God says to him very lovingly, he says, son, keep doing this and you can drive my car. But remember, for your job, you're not working for me. As for my house, you can live in it. And as for my children, I know you will take care of them. And that's what it's like to walk with God. Right? Bottom of 63. We found it very desirable to take this spiritual step with an understanding person such as our wife, best friend, or spiritual advisor. But it's better to meet God alone than one who might misunderstand. The wording was of course quite optional, so long as we expressed the idea, voicing it without reservation. This was only a beginning. So if honestly and humbly made, it's a condition. If honestly, humbly made, an effect, sometimes a very great one, was felt at once. Something I have witnessed in AA is people doing the third step, and that effect is good enough for them. They don't take the action, meaning they don't do it. I call those people low fruit pickers. And out where I live out here, there's cherry fields, there's pear field, there's apple. I mean, everywhere. I get all the fruit I can want from the farms out here. And when I go out there, you can go to the barn and get a ladder, or you can just be one of those people that throws a bucket over their shoulder and just picks all the low fruit that's bad in 2 days. Or you can grab a ladder and climb the top of the tree and break a sweat and get in there and get the good fruit. And many turn their world life, their world and their life over to the care of the meetings, or they do annual house cleaning, or they do inventory once a year. They don't do step 10 daily. They don't sit quietly morning at night. They might pray, meditate, not every day. They only make a handful of amends, old and new ones. They don't go out of their way to do service for others. They might turn down a sponsee, put them right in front of them. There's always drama. I always ask sponsees whether they're just getting into this or been this for 5 years and they don't want to make an amends or not doing. I said, you either meant what you said in the third step prayer, or you don't. That's the powerless of it. So you can be a low fruit picker, just grabbing the fruit that makes life easier, short-term positive effect, which might, remember you get paid or pay the price, right? Or you can work hard and climb the ladder and get the best fruit in the world. Long-term effect, you know. So before, one thing I want to say before we do this prayer is you must be certain, beyond doubt. And these are the questions I always ask sponsees when I'm at third step. Are you convinced you're an alcoholic? Are you convinced you cannot manage your life? Are you convinced human power has failed you? I'm sorry, are you convinced that human power cannot relieve your alcoholism? Are you convinced that God could and would if you were sought? Are you convinced that any life by itself would hardly be a success? Are you convinced you need to quit playing God? I ask them, are you ready to give up control? And are you convinced you cannot get rid of self entirely without his aid? Are you ready to take necessary action to turn your whole life over to the care of God, as you understand it? So we'll do the third step prayer as a group. I'm going to stop the recording right here because we're not going to all be recorded in this.